Rest easy, Henry.
Just chart it. Let the doctor handle the medicine.
I read the whole chart. I read the whole chart. He didn't. Come on, Henry. Stay with me.
Some endings get written before the story is over. A doctor signs an order, checks his watch, drives to the golf course, and the man in the bed becomes a line item. John Doe, no identification, flannel shirt folded on the chair. That was how the night was supposed to go. Instead, a night shift nurse named Chloe Hastings stood over that nameless old man, watching his heart rhythm break apart on a screen that glowed sick green in the dark. And she reached for the wrong vial on purpose. She had a fresh order with a doctor's name on it. She had a warning label in her memory that no one else had read. And she had about 90 seconds to choose between keeping her job and keeping a stranger alive. She chose. She did not yet know whose life she had just refused to lose. The day staff at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta called her the quiet one on nights, if they called her anything at all. She came in when the halls emptied out, tied her hair back without a mirror, and moved through the cardiac unit with a steadiness the others found hard to place. She never volunteered a story about herself. She never raised her voice. She had a way of standing at the foot of a bed and simply seeing a patient. All of them at once, the way some people can look at a full page and read it in a breath. What the day staff didn't know, what she had gone to quiet trouble to keep them from knowing, was that Chloe Hastings had spent 4 years as a flight nurse, working out of the belly of a helicopter with the doors open and the ground tilting away beneath her. She had kept people breathing at altitude, in the rain, with 2 minutes and a headlamp. On the inside of her left forearm, under a sleeve she never rolled up, there was a small tattoo, a set of wings, and a name. The name was Danny. She did not talk about Danny. When a monitor screamed, some part of her still expected to hear his voice on the other end of it, calm and dry, telling her the numbers. She had learned to keep that part folded up small and put away, the way you fold a flag. She had learned that the quietest thing in a room is often the one still standing after everyone else has run out of answers. She had come to Emory for exactly this: a floor, a badge, a shift that ended, walls that stayed still. She wanted to be no one for a while. She wanted the smallest life a person could carry and still call it a life. And for a long stretch of months, that was what she had. Then, a little after 11 on a Thursday night in October, they wheeled in a man with no name. He was older, past 70, with a weathered face and hands that had clearly worked for a living. He wore a soft red flannel shirt, the collar frayed to comfort, the kind of shirt a man keeps for 30 years because his wife once said she liked him in it. There was no wallet on him, no phone, no card, no chain, no cause. Someone had found him slumped on a bench near the botanical garden and called it in, and now he was Emory's problem, logged into the system as a John Doe. On his left hand was a plain gold wedding ring, worn thin at the back from decades of turning. That ring was the only thing he'd arrived with that said anything true about him, and it said only this: somebody, somewhere, was missing him. Chloe took the room. She always took the room nobody else wanted. She checked his lines, read his rhythm, and started the slow work of learning him the way she learned all of them. Not the chart, the man. His color was poor. His pulse ran ragged. But when she leaned in to adjust his pillow, his eyes came half open, cloudy and unafraid, and he looked at her like he'd known her a long time. "Thank you, hun," he said, the words slurred and soft. Then he was under again. "Hon." She kept that. She didn't know why. She wrote his vitals, and somewhere under her ribs, she gave him a name so he'd stop being a number. Henry, she decided. He looked like a Henry. She said it out loud once. Quiet, just to him. "Rest easy, Henry," and she got on with her night. The attending on call that night was Dr. Reed Lawson. Lawson was the kind of doctor who had arranged his entire career around being seen at the right places. He golfed with the men who sat on boards. He wore his authority like a good jacket and spoke in sentences built to end conversations. He had looked at Henry's case for perhaps 4 minutes, from the doorway, without touching him. An unidentified elderly male, cardiac, no history, no family, no leverage. He entered an order for amiodarone to manage the rhythm, told the desk to call him only if things declared themselves, and then he found a dark call room and a reclined chair, and made himself unreachable. The floor understood that Dr. Lawson was, for all practical purposes, gone. Around 1 in the morning, Henry's rhythm turned. The soft, patient chirp of the telemetry stretched and skipped, then began to climb towards something ugly. Chloe was there in seconds, coffee gone cold on the counter behind her, and she read the strip the way she'd read 100 bad strips out of a helicopter door. This was the drop before the fall. The amiodarone was hanging ready. It was ordered. It was the textbook drug for exactly this. A single push and the chart would be clean, and her name would be nowhere near the trouble. But Chloe had done the thing that Dr. Lawson had not done. She had read the whole chart, buried in the intake notes, entered hours earlier by a triage nurse, and never opened by anyone since, was a single line pulled from an old medical alert bracelet found in the man's shirt pocket. Severe adverse reaction. Amiodarone. Documented. Right there, in plain type, under a doctor's order to give him the one thing that might stop his heart for good. She stood in that green half-light with 2 vials in her mind, the amber one she was supposed to give, and the clear one that no one had ordered. She thought about her badge, she thought about her small, still life and the walls that stayed put. She thought about the fact that she was a night nurse and Reed Lawson was an attending physician, and the whole weight of the building sat on his side of that sentence. And then she thought about Danny and the way the quiet ones carry the most, and how there is no version of that carrying that lets you set a man down to save yourself. She overrode the pump. She drew magnesium sulfate, the off-order choice, the flight nurse choice, the one for a heart tearing itself apart when the standard drug is a locked door. She said his made-up name once, low, "Come on, Henry," and she pushed it slow and steady, while the monitor screamed and her own pulse hammered in her ears. For 11 seconds, nothing changed. She counted them. She had learned to count in a place where seconds were the only currency that mattered. Then the ragged line stumbled, caught, and began, reluctantly, then steadily, to smooth. The alarm fell back to a chirp. Henry's chest rose and settled into an easier rhythm, and his color, over the next few minutes, crept back from gray towards something like living. He never woke. He just breathed, and his heart held, and the wedding ring on his slack hand caught the low light. Chloe stood there a moment longer, one hand flat on the rail, and let herself feel exactly one breath of relief. Then she documented every second of it. The order, the allergy, the override, the drug, the time, the response. In the plain, unflinching language she'd been trained to use when the truth might one day have to stand up in a room full of people who didn't want to hear it. She signed it with her own name. She did not hide. By the time Dr. Lawson surfaced near dawn, the story had already hardened against her. What he heard was not a nurse saved a man's life. What he heard was a night nurse countermanded my order and pushed an unauthorized drug. His name was on that chart. His 4-minute assessment was on that chart, and now, beneath it, was proof that a nurse had read what he hadn't and done what he wouldn't. A doctor like Reed Lawson could survive a great many things. He could not survive being quietly, correctly overruled by the quiet one on nights. So he did what men like him do. He got there first. By 7 that morning it was framed and filed, insubordination, practicing beyond scope. A nurse who had, in his telling, gambled with a helpless patient's life on a hunch. The documented allergy became, in his mouth, a detail she'd gotten lucky on. The word reckless was used, the word unstable was implied. And because he was Dr. Lawson and she was the new one on nights, the room tilted his way before Chloe ever opened her mouth. They took her badge in a windowless office while the sky outside went from black to a flat, exhausted gray. The nurse manager wouldn't look at her. The words administrative separation were said, and effective immediately, and she was walked to her locker like something that might go off. She emptied it into a paper bag, a spare pair of shoes, a granola bar, a cheap paperback, and, from the very back where she'd tucked it and half forgotten it, a small card with edges gone soft from years of handling. A recruitment card, from a life she'd folded away. Flight nurse. The wings. Danny's outfit, once. She held it a moment in the flat morning light, and then she put it in her pocket, not the bag. She did not argue. She had learned that the truth is worthless until you can survive saying it out loud, and this was not a room built to let her survive it. So she said nothing they could use. She walked to the stairwell instead of the elevator, because she did not want to stand still in a lit box in front of anyone, and she sat down on a cold concrete step between the 4th floor and the 3rd, and for a little while, she let the weight of it come. 4 years of open doors and tilting ground, and a war behind her eyes she never mentioned, and it ended in a paper bag and a stranger's borrowed name. Henry, she thought. I'm sorry I won't be there tonight. Somebody feed him his ice chips. Somebody call him Han. She had shouldered her bag and started down the last flight, out toward the parking deck and whatever came after, when the doors at the bottom of the stairwell simply stopped. Not locked, exactly. Held. Through the small wire glass window, she saw the lobby, and the lobby was wrong. Men in dark suits stood at the elevators with their hands folded low and their eyes moving. More of them by the entrance. A woman with an earpiece was turning staff away from the 4th floor bank with a calm that was somehow louder than shouting. Outside, past the glass, vehicles were arriving that did not belong to any hospital. Black, identical, unhurried in the way only serious things are unhurried. A voice on the intercom, flat and official, told all non-essential personnel to remain where they were. The floor was being secured. Chloe stood on the last step with the paper bag against her chest and did the arithmetic of it slowly, because the answer was absurd. She had been let go 20 minutes ago. She was, officially, no longer essential to anything in this building, and every one of those dark suits, every locked door, every silent black vehicle, was pointed at one place. The cardiac floor. The floor with a nameless old man in a red flannel shirt. Far off, above the roofline of the city, she heard it before she understood it. The deep, layered thunder of a very large aircraft coming in low and deliberate over Atlanta, the kind of sound that reorders a whole sky around itself. She had heard a great many aircraft in her life. She had never heard that one come to a hospital. She sat back down on the concrete step, because standing did not seem like the right shape for what she was starting to think. She thought about a red flannel shirt with a frayed collar. She thought about a wedding ring worn thin at the back, and a wallet nobody had carried, and a bench in a botanical garden where a man had wanted, for 1 hour, to be nobody. She thought about the specific kind of quiet that had traveled with him into the room. Not the quiet of a man alone in the world, but the quiet of a man whose aloneness had been engineered and had failed. She thought about the fact that when he'd looked at her at 11 at night, he had looked at her like a man who was used to being looked at, and had been grateful, right down to the bone, to be looked at as if he weren't. The door at the bottom of the stairwell opened, and it did not open outward. 2 agents stepped through, unhurried, with the quiet manners of people whose politeness is the only warning you will ever get. One of them held a small photograph in his hand, and the other held nothing, which was worse. They asked, with great courtesy, whether she was Chloe Hastings. They asked whether she would come with them. She thought, with the last flat calm she had left, that they had somehow decided the dismissal wasn't enough. She followed them back up. Of course she did. She had never once, in 4 years of open doors, refused to walk back toward the thing that scared her. They took her out of the stairwell onto her own floor, and her own floor did not look like her floor anymore. The nurse's station was empty. The break room door was closed. Staff were pressed to the walls in 1s and 2s with the specific stillness of people trying not to be noticed by history. Near bed 12, Dr. Reed Lawson stood in a small circle of dark suits, and the circle was not deferring to him. His hands were clasped in front of him, the way a man clasps his hands when he has just discovered they will not stay still on their own. When Chloe passed him, His eyes came up out of instinct and then dropped again with something in them she had not seen there before. Not shame yet, but the flat, oxygen-thin recognition that came just before it. He did not speak. His mouth moved once, as if to shape her name, and closed on nothing. They brought her to the open door of bed 12. Beside the bed, holding the old man's ring hand in both of his, stood a man Chloe had seen 1,000 times without ever standing in a room with. He was not wearing a jacket. His tie was loose. His face was not the face from the podium. It was just a son's face, undone. Beyond his shoulder, the flannel shirt was folded on the chair where she had left it 8 hours ago, red as ever, and the man in the bed was awake. The son turned. He looked at her a long moment before he spoke. "You're the one," he said. It wasn't a question. Chloe looked past him to the bed. Henry, the man she had called Henry, was pale but present, and his cloudy eyes found her and warmed with a recognition that owed nothing to the office his son held. "There she is," the old man said, his voice a dry rasp. "There's my girl. Thank you, hun." And that, the hun, the old worn word from 1 in the morning, when he was nobody, and she was nobody, and there was only the work. That was the thing that finally moved in her chest. Not the aircraft, not the suits, not the sun. Just an old man in a flannel shirt calling her the same soft name he'd called her when she was the only person in the world who knew he was still in there. The reckoning that followed was quiet, the way the real ones usually are. The chart told the whole story in plain type. The order, the allergy, the override, the time, the response, all of it signed in her own unhidden hand. Dr. Reed Lawson's 4-minute assessment sat above it like a confession. When they asked him in the corridor to walk them through his reasoning, he set one hand flat against the wall as if to steady himself against a floor that was no longer where he'd left it, and he did not look at Chloe once. He surrendered his badge without being asked for it. He handed it across with both hands, the way a man hands across something he has finally understood he was only ever borrowing. Her badge came back before noon. The word reckless was never used in that building again. But the moment that mattered wasn't the reinstatement. It came a little after, when a hospital administrator, flustered and eager, tried to introduce her to a room of serious people as the nurse who saved the president's father, and the old man, from the bed, cut him off with a slow shake of his head. "No," he said. "She's Henry's nurse." He smiled at their confusion, and he did not explain it, because the only two people who needed to understand it already did. Later that week, when the sky over Atlanta was just a sky again and the suits were gone and Henry had been flown home to be fussed over by people with far more letters after their names, Chloe Hastings came back for her shift. She came in when the halls emptied out. She tied her hair back without a mirror. Somewhere in her locker, edges soft with handling, sat a card with a pair of wings on it and a name she loved. Under her sleeve, on the inside of her forearm, those same wings, Danny, quiet and folded and carried. She checked her patients, read their rhythms, and let her cold coffee go colder. She was, once again, the quiet one on nights. It was exactly the size of life she had wanted, and it turned out to be more than big enough to hold the truth of who she had always been.